Grimcast Manila is a podcast of creepy stories from around the metro. I'm your scaredy cat host, Antoinette, and I love a good ghost story. In this episode, we're talking to Johan. He is the artist and author behind Milky, a collection of illustrated stories ranging from comedic to horrific, available on Facebook and Instagram. During the day, Johan is an educator teaching high school science. Welcome to the show, Johan.
What's up? Thanks for having me.
Yay! So, before we get things started on the really heavy questions, tell me a little bit about Milky.
Hi. So, Milky is kind of like a passion project of mine. It started out from way back in college where I would just draw everyday mundane things, me and my classmates, and kind of evolved a bit more now during quarantine. Started taking a life of its own. And right now it's evolved into what I would say its peak. It's currently filled with a lot of spooky things and horror-related stories that some users submit to me and some that even come from my own experiences.
Yeah, and I just also want to share that how I actually found Milky was through a Facebook group called for the comic Trece, the graphic novel Trece, which is an amazing title by Budgetan. And it's in the group, enthusiasts kind of just share things that they like. And a former teacher of mine actually shared Milky, and I didn't know what the connection was between you guys yet. And so I checked it out and have been following it ever since. And so that's when I messaged Johan blindly, "Hi, would you like to be on my podcast?" And thankfully he said yes.
It's an experience that I really wanted to try as well. So really, thank you so much for having me.
Yay.
Already such a fun experience right now.
I'm glad. So let's get right into it. The question of the hour is basically, do you believe in ghosts?
Yes. The simple answer to it is yes, I do in fact believe in ghosts. It's not so much it's not so much something that built up over time. It's something that I really did believe in ever since I was a kid. I come from a Christian family, very religious family. And it's always been our idea that there are spirits living among us. There are malicious spirits. There are very kind spirits. And my idea of ghosts stems from that religious belief in this religious household as well. So yeah, I do believe in ghosts ever since I was a kid. And with my experiences, I can really say that ghosts do exist in this world.
No, because that's really interesting. Because I mean, when I introduced you and we were talking a bit before we started, you mentioned that you were teaching science, and science is basically the polar opposite of all things supernatural. So I was wondering how you sort of reconcile that, these personal experiences that you have versus the science that you breathe and teach every day.
That's a classic idea. Or that's a classic question that I always get from my students as well. The idea that science and religion are polar opposites. I actually don't believe in that one. You can't have one with the other. They can actually coincide with each other. The ideas behind these two beliefs. And it's something that I always try to get across to my students, that we're in a Catholic school. Yeah, I teach in a Catholic school. I can teach science. I can teach things like evolution. I can teach things like the creation of the earth through the Big Bang and things like that. But we can also have the idea of spirits and spirituality alongside of it. I never really want my students to think that science is evil or science goes against religion. And I also don't want them to think that religion is like a pseudoscience or religion is all based on just beliefs. In the end of the day, we're humans. We try to make things or make sense of things that we don't understand. And I think we can't just adhere to one thing. We can't just adhere to science. We can't just adhere to religion. Something that we need to balance out and we need to figure out ourselves.
Right. And that's actually really interesting that you mentioned that because I'd had this conversation like a couple of episodes ago, and I'm of the opinion that while science can explain very, very many things, I kind of I don't think that we know like 100% of what science is or like what the world is, or that science, has discovered every single thing on this earth or universe. So, maybe the supernatural, or these things that we can't explain or can't see right now, is just something that we haven't yet discovered. I mean, there's just so many things left out there that can't be explained. So yeah, with that, I am completely on board with what you said. So getting right into it, what's the earliest creepy encounter that you remember?
You know what? I'd like to share with you this one creepy encounter of mine that actually majority of my students already know because I always tell them this story in class.
Huh?
Something that happened to me back in college. When I was in college, especially in the fourth year. We were doing the thesis for our final year. And in that thesis, we had something to do with clams. Basically, we needed to put clams in an aquarium and we needed to keep them inside the campus and monitor them throughout 3 months of the thesis schedule. Because of that, we were given the special privilege of keeping that aquarium inside one of the laboratories in our school, right? So, and the best thing about that is that we can go to school on the weekends and we can actually borrow the keys to that laboratory and go there on our own just to check up on our thesis, clean the aquarium, things like that. Something, I don't know, it's a vivid memory that's both positive and a little bit stressful for me to remember because thesis days. Okay. Well, anyway, the story goes there's one Sunday wherein me and my thesis partner, shout out, me and my thesis partner were supposed to go there and we were supposed to clean up the 50% of the water that was in the aquarium. Fortunately, he couldn't come, so it was just me alone. Of course, that's how all horror stories start. It's you alone in an empty room, right? So the thing happened is I did clean the aquarium. I was done with it, and I was going outside already. I was basically packing up, and then the moment that I turned around, almost locking the door, I heard a splash. That splash obviously got me concerned because the only body of water there would be my aquarium, my thesis. I rushed back into the room, and sure enough, I saw this aquarium in the water splashing around, swishing in there. And at that point, I didn't think much of it. What immediately came into my mind was, I was
my
furious.
clams!
Yes, exactly. My thesis. I was furious that something must have happened. The window was open. By the way, the aquarium was right by the window. So I peeked out. My initial idea was that there must be a cat in here.
A cat or something.
Yeah, messing around with my thesis. I looked out. Nothing's there. So just looked at it, checked on my clams. They were all there, luckily or thankfully. And little bits of splash of water on the table itself. So me filled up the aquarium again, started packing up once again, and what do you know? Splash again the moment that I turned around, right? So went back into the room, saw the water splashing a bit more violently this time, talagang medyo galit na ako. Kasi, grabe tong pusa na to. Pinagtiripan ako nitong pusa na.
Right.
The first thoughts that come into your mind isn't a haunting. It's, my gosh, this cat. I'm going to kill it if ever I find it. Right. So the second time that I went there, much more of the water was actually missing, and the water was still shaking violently. Looked around, tried to find where this cat wasn't there. Shut the window, and the moment that I shut the window, it actually changed the light a bit around the room. I could see a little bit more of the spilled water, and the spilled water, I followed the droplets. Apparently it's on the table. And then a bunch of the water also spilled down on the floor. So I noticed that there was this trail
Okay.
of water, small droplets. There weren't any footprints or whatever. It's just small droplets that led from the area of my thesis all the way to the sink. And this sink was a very lengthy sink. I don't know if you've
Mm,
ever been to a biology lab before, but they got
right.
these
It's like one
very
of
long
those lab
sinks.
sinks.
Yeah, and there was this cabinet underneath, followed the droplets to the cabinet. And by that time, I was really thinking, yeah, the cat must be in here.
The cat's right here.
Everything wasn't registering right to me. I never thought to myself that how could a cat open a cabinet and how could a cat close a cabinet behind it? All I knew was there is a cat in this cabinet. I am going to kill it once I open this door. Right? And open the door. Three, two, one, open the door. Nothing's there.
But
Absolutely
there's
nothing.
still wet droplets inside the cabinet.
Yeah. Sure enough, it led there. And, you know, about 2 seconds passed, just looking at this empty cabinet.
Mhm.
And then it finally registered on something's not right.
Mhm.
Something I feel isn't completely normal as to what's happened. And just as I was thinking that, splash, another splash from behind me. And
Really?
at that moment, yeah, that was probably my creepiest experience. And at that moment, you know what I did?
What?
Closed the door, left the campus, and just waited for my thesis partner to take his next turn for it. Siya na bahala doon sa mundo na.
Never mind the clams. I
Yeah.
thought my thesis was important, but my life matters more.
Luckily enough, the following day, my thesis partner came by and he was the one who fixed everything. Never saw or never experienced anything like it again for my thesis. And, I graduated. Here I am. Thesis done.
I wonder what that was though, but all the clams were still in the aquarium.
Yeah, all the clams were still in the aquarium. It's just basically something's messing with the water or more so messing with me.
Mm-mm. And your thesis mate didn't report anything or like say that anything similar had happened to him as well.
He reported nothing, but the only thing was that when he came back, true enough, majority of the water was already gone. Luckily, we still had about, I think, 2 months before the final defense of the thesis. So we had time to recuperate from that.
So when most of the water was gone and you tried to like put it all back, it never really happened again.
Nope. Luckily enough, thankfully enough, it never happened to me. It's just a one-time thing, and I'm actually very happy that it never happened again.
I mean, I'm going to ask a question and I hope it doesn't sound stupid. Could this have
Alright.
just been an overzealous clam?
No. Right. So maybe I should have mentioned the type of clam that we were dealing with back then. It's tulyat.
Okay.
Tulyat, it's like a few centimeters in length. So small.
Oh, okay.
Wouldn't have been able to do much of that. And besides, these clams, they're sedentary
Okay.
organisms. They're just there.
So it couldn't have been any of them.
If it were, man, I would have put it in a circus, I guess. Everyone
you could have
observed the
been on
jumping
the-
clam.
You could have been on the brink of a special discovery of a special clam.
Yes.
So, I mean, did you hear anything from maybe the guards? Did you ask anyone about, that room or if anything like that had happened to anybody else?
At that point, me being a biology student, I think I didn't mention that before, but my course in college was biology.
Mm-hmm.
If you talk about seeing ghosts in those areas, you get to have two reactions. One is that your classmates or your colleagues would say that you're lying, and or two, they tell you to go show them, and I don't really want that much of what do you call that? That much of attention on my thesis. The thesis itself is supposed to be very uh, kept away from human traffic. That's the big part of my thesis from back
Mm,
then.
right. Right. Okay. And had there been any other creepy experiences in the school in general, or had you heard about anything else?
Oh yeah, I never really experienced anything else aside from maybe late at night you just hear some stray winds. You swear
Yeah.
are voices, but that's just normal for old buildings. This school,
Mm-hmm.
however, sorry if I'm purposely omitting the name of the school, but
No
this
problem.
school, yeah, it used to stand all the way from the time of the war.
Uh huh.
Yeah. And the story goes was that this school way back then was actually bombed and it was reduced to rubble. And the old version
Mm-hmm.
of the school or the old buildings of the school can actually be found underneath where the building right now stands. So that's just the setting for a perfect horror story, right? You have it there. You
Mm,
have
yeah.
this. Were there any dead people there? Possibly. Ghosts? Yeah, sure. Why not?
Possibly. Just for further context, is this sort of in the Taft area or in the University Belt area?
It's in the Taft area, so I guess you can narrow it down a little bit more now.
Not really, because there are still a few options.
All right,
So
well,
okay, all
that's
right.
all the hints you get.
Yeah, yeah. Because I mean, more if it's in the Taft area, then it's very much involved in the Japanese occupation, the siege of Manila Bay. So those terribly traumatic events that happened in our history, and that's kind of where I think that's kind of where a lot of stories from the schools kind of come from. And if you notice, kind of the stories are all quite similar even
It's
from
all about the
school to
war.
school. It's all about the war. It's all about a soldier, a priest, a
A
nun,
nun.
or like um, people who were caught in a school because of a bomb or an invasion. So it's quite. It seems like this event has really had quite its ripples in basically that whole area.
And which brings me to my question: if ever this was related to the war, soldier, a nun, or a priest, what do they have to do with my clams?
What did they want with your clams? Maybe, they were having an off day. It's kind of boring. You said it was on a weekend. You're like, let's play with some clams. But when
Some
you actually
asshole
went
ghost.
when you went to check in on your clams, was it during the day or was it like at
Oh
night
yeah,
or oh
it was
okay.
actually bright Sunday morning. So really not the settings that you would expect for a horror story like this or a haunting like this. Bright Sunday
Mm-hmm.
morning, birds were chirping outside, cats were walking around, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So it just goes to show that these types of hauntings, they don't have a time limit or they don't have a schedule. If you're
Mm-hmm.
alone, you're vulnerable, they will find you. They'll make you
Right.
know that they're there.
Okay. Well, you mentioned that happened to you in college, no? Did anything ever happen to you after that? Or maybe later on? Well, no, that was thesis, so that was like the end of college, right? So, did anything happen to you after that?
Yeah, I actually have a bunch more different stories. By the way, in my page, I always
Mm-hmm.
mention that I do get fan submissions. Yeah, that's true. Lots of fans have submitted to me in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and I do put a few twists in some of their stories just to make them a little bit more interesting, but the entire plot is still there.
Mm-hmm.
But it is also true that the earlier submissions that I had,
Mm.
specifically my comics entitled 32, I hope you read it.
Mm-hmm.
32, the one about Josephine from Intramuros, all of those are roughly romanticized versions of my actual experiences with ghosts. So let's talk about 32.
Sure.
32 is a common urban legend or a legend within my current workplace.
Okay.
32 is a student or an extra student that you always find in a specific room. It's in the science room, which I
Which
teach in.
science room?
It's a science room near the near the pond. I hope you
The
still remember
bio
that one.
room. No,
Yes,
okay. So
exactly.
just for context for our listeners, Johan actually teaches at my high school where I went to. So if any of you intrepid listeners have ever heard me drop where I went to school before, that's a clue.
Yeah, it's so this room is called the grade 7 science room. So grade 7
Okay.
students here beware. The idea behind that was my first year ever in that school. I was
Uh-huh.
recently hired. My boss or my coordinator at that time just casually dropped it on me, told me, "Oh, by the way, if you're in the grade 7 science room, don't have the kids count off." And I said,
Why?
"What? What? Huh?
But we do
Where'd
that
that
all the
come from?"
time.
Yeah, apparently, I don't know when it started, but there have been hauntings or there have been reports of this extra student that keeps on popping up whenever you have the students count off in the grade 7 science room. So if there are 37 students currently enrolled there or for that class, someone or something will always come up to 38. Right, the class count off will always amount to 38.
Mm-hmm.
uh, if you have them uh, group up, you'll notice that there's always a weird number of students per group. If
Mm-hmm.
they're all by fours, you'll notice that there's a fifth one somewhere, and it's weird. It's you never really get to find out who
Mm-hmm.
this extra student is. So
Mm-hmm.
there's no name attached to it. There's no further legend behind it, like who's this student that haunts this area. There's just this myth there or this legend that you never should count off the student. So me, in my comics, I just gave it a face and I gave it just to romanticize it a bit. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
that's one of the few legends there. I've only experienced it once when I had the student count off.
So you
Right,
have
so
experienced it yourself.
yeah,
Oh my
hence the
gosh.
hence the number 32. I had 31 students back then. I told them count
Okay.
off 1, 2, 3. Okay, so every time the third student would go there, they should repeat back to one. And
Yeah.
I was turned around. I was writing something on the board, and
Mm.
then you know, all in all, this was their groupings, by the way. So while we
Yeah.
were counting off, one of the students casually said, "Sir, sobra." "No sobra." And then when I asked her, "Sir, but number 3 yung dulo?" Yeah. And
Yeah.
uh, and it dawned on me. And I'm not too sure if it's 3 or if it's 2. How would you divide 31 students?
No,
I
it should
think
be
number 2.
even. Yeah, it should end at
Yeah.
2 because 33 would mean 11 groups, right?
Yeah. So no, 31. They were really 31 students, and then
Ah,
it would
okay.
always amount to 32. So, ayun, sumasobra. What's happening here? I was expecting 10 groups of threes and then one group of
Ah,
only 2 students. Everyone was present that day. So, why is it that it
okay.
always amounts to an extra student? So, I turned around, told them again, count off. And then this time, I watched them carefully. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Mm-hmm.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And really, when it got to the very end, it's always one extra student. And then I asked them, saan tayo nagkamali? But, tama naman, di ba? And they all just
Uh-huh.
looked at me, sir, tama, tama. And I told them, sino pa yung maling sinasabi? Sino nagsasabi ng 2 instead of 1 or 3 instead of 2? It's a little foggy on my part there. But
Uh-huh.
no one, absolutely no one was answering. So I told them, okay, ladies, one last time. Let's do this very slowly.
Uh-huh.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And still, at the very end, there's one extra student who just couldn't figure out how is this happening. It's like something was messing with the entire class that day.
Oh
Uh,
my god, how did your kids react?
you know, those kids have been there longer than I have. It was my first year teaching. Some of them were there
Since
since
grade
grade school,
school.
so
Right.
they know this story. And I was looking at them. It's the third time that we've counted off. There was something obviously wrong. I was looking at them and I saw fear in their eyes. Some of them were
Uh-huh.
to the brink of crying. These
Oh
were grade 7
no.
students, very
Babies.
baby. So I kept my cool. And I just told them,
Okay.
ladies, maybe it's just, after lunch, we're just hungry.
We're
Maybe
sleepy.
something's going on. And then, silently, I just gave a little prayer to myself and to my students. They didn't know that I
Mm.
was praying, but it's my first year there. I didn't want anything to follow me home.
Right, right. Um,
So
no, that's really creepy because sorry, go on.
no, no, I was actually just going to end. So that's the story of really the true story behind my comic 32.
So I've been in that room. So this is what would be the bio room, no?
Right now there's a new bio room, the grade 7
Oh,
science room. Right now it's designated as the Earth Science room.
okay. All right. But it's the one with the pond in the middle. And then
No.
at the other end of the pond, there's like another door, which is a lab.
But this one specifically is on the right of
The
the
right.
pond. Yeah, the
Right.
right side of the pond.
So on the right side of the pond. So yeah, I've had classes there. And I remember, are there still those display cabinets at the end of, the sides of the pond
They're still
where
there.
they
They
display like
had
preserved
shells.
animals, shells, kind of donated to the school for science.
Yep, they're still there. Still very much preserved and still very much creepy.
Right, super creepy, right? And I was wondering, is there still the baby there?
Yeah. The baby is still there, but it's stuck at the very last row so that some of the students won't be able to notice that, oh, it's a baby. But yeah, it's still there. They're not going to give that away.
Yeah, because before when I was there, that was like right out front, and all of us like right before bio waiting for the class, we'd all be like, huh, this is a baby.
And
It's a tiny human that is not alive anymore.
so yeah, the creepy factor just went up a bit more right now.
But actually, I'm not sure if you have the same experience, but in those string of science rooms, it's actually super creepy. Like, so that room, which is now the general sciences room, there's another room above that, which used to be called the health room. And then on the other side is the chem room. And then also very nearby is the physics lab. It's the physics
Yep.
room and physics lab. And I was wondering if you'd ever taught any classes in that room.
Yeah. There is actually another legend or another myth inside that room, the physics room. For the viewers or for the listeners right now, the physics room has its own separate restroom.
Yes.
Yeah, inside that restroom, anyone who's in this school would already notice that it's one of the restrooms without any mirrors inside.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
I knew you knew this one. Okay. I personally have never had an experience of this, but the story goes, it's because in this mirror there always shows the spirit of a nun from
Yeah.
before. So creeps so many people out that they had to remove it. Had to get rid of the mirrors in this room. Every now
It's
and then,
really creepy.
every now and then, when my students would say, "Sir, may I go to the restroom?" and they're in the physics room, I tell them it's right there. Just go. They tell me, "Sir, no, please, not in that one." And I
They
tell
go to a
them,
different one.
yeah, they go all around to the canteen. They go to the restroom there. You know,
No, because
and
I mean, we had physics classes are in fourth year, right? And so it's the
Mhm.
physics room, which is kind of like it's like a lecture hall type, which has like raised platforms for the seats, and the teacher is like on the bottom ground floor. And then
Mhm.
right beside the board is the door to the lab. And then further on in the lab, there's a door to the bathroom, which is this so it's like the third room on. And so if you have a class in the physics room and everybody else is in the physics room and you're going to go 2 rooms away, it's super creepy because when you go in there, I mean, it's like your usual white light bathroom scenario. But on the wall, there's literally, you can see where the mirrors used to be like screwed in or drilled in, and it's like you know that that's where it was taken off from. And it's always like nobody's in there. So I remember every time like I desperately had to go to the bathroom, I'd actually like ask someone to come with me. And I remember like, I don't know if this is TMI, I'm sorry, but like I never would lock the door. Like I just like close it. I wouldn't lock it just in case like I would need to run out super fast.
Trust me, my students right now, they still make the same bargain. Sir, if I need to go to the physics restroom, can I have my classmate come with me? And I tell them, no, you can go alone. When you get there, you won't be alone anymore. Then they say, yes, sir, stop.
Sir, why? Huwag naman.
And you know what? Let me just add something there. You mentioned that when you were a student there, it was a white light inside that restroom. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right now, or in the previous years when I was teaching on campus, yeah, the lights there, now they flicker really, really badly. When you go inside, there's like Silent Hill.
Oh my gosh. No, it's I swear, it feels like a portal to another dimension. That's how creepy this bathroom is. And it's like tucked in, like right in the back too. So anyway, there's a lot of stories about the school. I actually had a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, a batchmate, a couple of episodes back. And some of the stories that she would tell about this school was it kind of explains why there's so much there. Because I mean, during the war, it was really a hospital, because that's where the nuns were, and they were sort of in charge of taking in the sick and the wounded. And she mentioned that so many people would be so gravely ill or critically injured that I don't know if you call it the new building still, but we have a building there. We used to call it the new building. I don't know if there's a new name for it now, but it's the one. So it's the canteen, and it's the building right by the canteen, with like the ground floor is sort of like this open space.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that one. But me mentioning the name of the building would give away what we're talking about.
At the time, we just called it the new building. And apparently, so it was the new building because it was like newly constructed, obviously, at the time. But apparently, when they were excavating it to lay in the foundations, they found that it was a mass grave. For those who were ill or injured, who had passed away when it was used as when the site was used as a hospital. So some of these bodies would never be claimed. So it was a mass grave. That's where they buried these unfortunate, these poor souls. When they were digging it up to lay in the foundations, they found a bunch of skeletons, and they just tried to exhume everyone and lay them to rest somewhere else. And yeah, that's how that story goes. I don't know if you were familiar with that story.
No, absolutely not. It's the first time I'm hearing this, and gotta say, I'm super interested now. I want to know more.
You should listen to that episode because her grandmother was actually part of the La Salle massacre. Like, she was in the chapel when the massacre happened. And a few days, she survived, obviously. But a few days later, she woke up in the school that we're mentioning, because that's where the hospital was. And that's how she knew that was a mass grave, because her grandmother told her about, everything that was happening there at the time. And she was interviewed by like Nat Geo and all these like historic like programs to talk about that time. So yeah, super creepy.
Yeah. Speaking about it, since you mentioned the fact that this was again used as a hospital from before, would it be okay if I shared with you just one more experience?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So the story goes behind this one is that I did hear about this one that is also supposedly haunted. This
Which
room right
one?
now, it's on the third
Oh my
floor
god. Yes.
and all the way to the end of the hallway on the left
Yes.
side.
Okay, tell me what you know and I'll tell you what I know.
Okay, I personally never experienced anything from here, but I've heard it from my students. This one simple question. This one simple story here. The rooms here, they had mirrors, or sorry, not mirrors. They had windows at the side.
Mhm.
Okay, so
On the
the
doors,
students could
right?
actually, yeah, on the doors and on the wall.
On
So
on the wall, right, right.
yeah, and there are two doors, one at the front and one at the way back of the class. Okay,
Mhm.
so these students, while they were still there, they saw someone walk past the front door, went all the way to the back, and they knew that this someone was a teacher. So they were expecting, must be a teacher coming in to observe the class, right?
Mm-mm.
So this person just went to the back of to the back door, started jiggling the knob, but it wouldn't
Mhm.
open. So
Mhm.
class president stands up and opens the door for the teacher. When they open it,
Right.
surprise, surprise, no one's there.
Oh my
And
gosh.
of course, the entire class was spooked, completely out of their minds. We heard, I was teaching in the second floor that day,
Uh-huh.
and we
Uh-huh.
heard the screams all the
Oh
way from the
wow.
third floor. And you know what? Ever since then, that room has been used only as a stock room. No, no one uses that room
Oh,
now. Yeah, that's where all the props
really?
go.
Okay. That's super interesting because the story that I have about that room, which I've actually like told on a previous episode, but I will share with you now because it's super interesting. There's actually a different story about that room, and it's really interesting that it's no longer used now. We were in fourth year, and you know how seniors have to take their exams early, like the fourth quarter exams early because we
Yeah,
do
because they
grad
need to prepare for
practice,
graduation.
yeah, and graduation and all that. So the fourth year students were taking our exams early, and it was that entire floor. But then some of the other rooms on that floor weren't senior, so it was normal classes. And I was in the room right after. So you know how the bathrooms kind of split the two sides of the hall. So
Yeah.
classrooms to the left, classrooms to the right. We were in the first classroom after the bathroom to the right. So taking our exams, diligently, proctor in front, quietly, and, doing our own thing. And then in the middle, for some unknown reason, suddenly we hear screams in the hall, like down the hall. And then our teacher was like, her first reaction was like, "Ay naho, why are these kids just playing around? I'm going to go check on them. Everybody, no cheating. Just look at your own test papers." And so she was actually quite irritated because she thought that there were just some students who were left without a teacher who were dicking around. So she leaves the classroom and she goes towards the room. At that point, we didn't know where it was. We just knew that she left the room. But eventually, we find out that she went to the last classroom on the third floor. So all the way to the end. And eventually, this is the story that got to us na. She looks inside, through the door. There's like a window. And she looks inside and all the students are on like squeezed to the front on the platform. And all of them are freaking out and cry. Some of them are crying, screaming. And she's like, "What's going on here?" So she opens the door and she's like, "Oh, what's happening?" And she sees that the teacher is passed out on the platform. And, some of the students are trying to tend to her because she's like, "Oh my God, she's passed out." And for some reason, when she opened the door, that's when all the students looked to the door. And it's like that was the only time they remembered, "Oh, yeah, the door. We could run out." And that's the only time they ran out. And eventually, the story that was passed on was everybody was doing their thing, doing class as normal. And then suddenly they hear from the back of the classroom like sobbing. Like at first, it's quiet sobbing. And then, like quiet sobbing. And then suddenly it gradually gets louder and louder and louder until it's like full on wails, like freaking out wails. And at that point, everybody rushed to the front because everybody was so scared. And that's how it happened. And then they're all in the front, and they're hearing these like wails all over the room, like something weird is going on. And the only time they kind of snapped out of that trance was when my teacher had opened the door. And so what happened afterwards was eventually the teacher, our proctor, went back to our room, and she's like, "Don't worry about it, kids. Nothing special. Just finish your test." But when we had exited our classroom after that class, we saw that that classroom was actually barricaded with seats. Like it was blocked off. Like those high school chairs with like the arm, it was like put side by side so nobody could go there. And then every time after school for like the next 1 or 2 weeks, we would see the teachers all together come out of the come out of the faculty room on the second floor and go up with prayer books and candles and with some of the nuns to go into that room to pray there, or I think they did a novena to whatever was going on there. And after that, we never really found out what it was. And then for a while that was going on, the room remained blocked off. And then eventually it was opened up again. And they of course they would never really tell us what actually happened or what they found out, because it's probably like they don't want to distract the kids with that. But yeah, that was really, really creepy. And it was like, it was so incontrovertible because we heard it and we saw it, and we saw the chairs blocking off that room for like the next couple of days. So something did go down. So yeah.
Yeah, when you were starting off the story, I was actually trying to remember it. When did this happen? I haven't heard any stories about this one. And then the moment that you mentioned the crying, yun nga pala yun. I would always ask them, bakit nga ba hindi na ginagamit yan? And those were the two stories. One was the most recent one where, again, teacher or whatever it was trying to open the back door. And then if I were to ask my co-faculties, they would always say, dyan yung may umiiyak. And I never really learned the story behind it until now. Yun pala yun, yung may umiiyak.
Yeah.
That's it.
That was actually so creepy. And of course, syempre, like we knew some of the people there, but we just kind of didn't want to ask because we knew it was a traumatic experience. We knew who the teacher was at the time, but we didn't want to bring it up just so we wouldn't make it awkward. But yeah, it was super creepy. And incidentally, that's also the room where, you know how graduation is, before pre-pandemic times, graduation is done at the field.
Yeah.
Right. And so that building, the outer windows of the wall are the ones facing the field. And there's sort of like this urban legend that,
wait, let me guess. Is
Okay,
this
go.
the one where, I'm not sure if it's the same story, but is this the one where you would see people marching down in the field? No, not that one. Not that one. Really, another one.
So, wow. Okay. So, no. So this story is a little bit more benign in the sense that it's during graduation. Every graduating batch reports that the window in the topmost corner classroom, which would be that room where all those weird things happen, would be open. And sometimes they would see like a student kind of watching the graduation ceremonies. And I don't know about that, but during my graduation, it was open. But I didn't see anything.
Goodness.
But the urban legend is that there's a story there. The urban legend is that there's this girl who was supposed to graduate and didn't because of some reason or another, and unfortunately took her own life. And that's why she kind of every graduation, she just stands there and watches all the kids graduating. But again, that's an urban legend, completely uncorroborated.
Man, I am having a blast right now. I love this. I could totally make a comic strip out of this one.
Yeah. And so what's the story about people marching?
Oh, that one, it's such a short story, but the story goes, if you go to the third floor at night and you peek out of one of the windows, I'm not even sure if it's the same window we're talking about, but you can see these hooded figures. Some say they're nuns, some say they look like people, but they're hooded figures in white. They would march down into the field, and then they form circles. And that's basically it. That's all I know about it. Super creepy, but I personally have never experienced it. Let me share with you
That's
something stupid that I do.
okay, sure.
Ever since I've heard that all those stories in the school where I teach in, I
Mhm.
became so entranced with the idea that I might be able to see one of these ghosts. That
Okay.
I have stayed back sometimes around 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and I've went to these rooms,
Mhm.
specifically the one that we were talking about. I've looked through the windows, I've knocked on the doors, I've sat inside the room, just waiting for something to happen. I've even went so much as to, turn off all the lights. I've walked by all these supposedly haunted rooms trying to find something. I know it's not something that you do. I know that I mentioned at the first half of this show that I do believe in ghosts. And
Yeah.
basically what I'm doing there is that you know, I'm begging them to just show them their substance. But I don't know what came over me. It's what I do. And there was also that time where 9 o'clock, I think it was sometime Christmas time,
Uh-huh.
people had practices for the Christmas
Yeah.
shows and everything. Nine
Yeah.
o'clock, all the lights were off. I
Uh-huh.
just sat in the middle of the field thinking to myself, so when are these hooded figures going to come out? I wish they would come out and show themselves. I don't know. It's something that I do. I tempt
You're a very
fate,
brave
basically.
man. Very, very brave man. I personally would not do that. Like the moment there is a dark hallway, I'd be like, no, I'm not going down there. Excuse me while I go straight to the gate where there are lights and guards.
Though I guess there's just this one very last experience. I hope I'm not
Mhm.
taking too much time
No,
here.
no, not at all. Go ahead.
I did get what I want.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at the I've never experienced something called sleep paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah. People say that it's such a scary thing. I've never experienced it until one day when I was in the faculty. So
Oh,
uh, yeah, it was a few days after my escapade that I told you about. I
okay.
went to the room, so I guess that's karma for you, or that's ghost karma.
Uh-huh.
I could make a shirt out of that, ghost karma.
Ghost
Anyway,
karma.
so there, I'm not sure if you've ever been to the faculty before, but there is
I have.
a faculty lounge at the very end of the rooms. Okay? The
I've
faculty
never been in
lounge.
there.
Yeah, I guess so. It's a faculty thing.
It's a faculty lounge. We're not supposed to be there.
Yeah, but there's this faculty lounge where the faculty can actually sleep on some very small beds
Mhm.
in between their classes.
Mhm.
I had basically a 4 hour break that day.
Wow.
And, yeah,
Parang college lang,
some
ah.
days you get that. Some days you get that. Some days you're completely packed. But anyway, I thought to myself, I could do work right now, or I could maybe take a 1 hour nap and then
Mm.
be energized for the day.
Mm.
During that hour nap, I would sleep like a vampire, arms crossed in front of my chest. That's because I would hold my phone on top of
On
my
you.
chest so that I could hear the alarm
Right,
whenever I
right.
wake up. Anyway, this position was really comfortable for me. It worked. But during that day, I suddenly couldn't move. And it was my
Uh-huh.
first time experiencing sleep paralysis. And I remember it so vividly. I thought to myself, while my eyes were closed, I was just lying there motionless. I thought to myself, wow, eto pala pakiramdam nun. So this is what it feels like, sleep paralysis. I just thought, cool. I wonder how I'm going to get out of this. And then, the door opened up. I was expecting someone to come in and maybe sleep on another bed or sit
Uh-huh.
on the chair. There was a chair on my right side. It's a
Uh-huh.
little woven chair, very rickety.
Uh-huh.
I was laying there, and this person sat beside me and started whispering. I don't know. I started whispering things to me,
Like,
gibberish. It was
oh gosh.
complete gibberish. Just I couldn't make out anything, but they were really close to my ear, and they were whispers. And what's weird about it is I knew who that person was.
What?
I could feel who it was, and I could familiarize. I was familiar with the voice. You know how
Okay.
sometimes even if your eyes are closed, someone
Yeah.
opens the door, you can tell who that person is.
Yeah. Sometimes it's like how they walk or like sounds
Yeah.
they make or even just their
Yeah. So
voice.
so this person was one of my co-faculties. He's actually in the same area as me. So at that point, I was thinking, he might not know that I have sleep paralysis right now. He's trying to wake
Mm.
me up, or he's trying to tell me, hey, we have a meeting. You need to get up, or something like that. So I really didn't mind it. Went on for a while, and it only occurred to me, that this is kind of weird. What are you whispering? Can't you see that I'm not waking up? Went on for
Right.
a while, maybe about a minute or a minute and a half. And then
Uh-huh.
this person stands up, closes the door behind him. The moment that I hear the latch, door, suddenly I can move.
Huh.
Okay, so I didn't think much about it. I stood up. I tried to follow him because I was going
Uh-huh.
to tell him, I'm sorry, I didn't get any of that.
Right.
I was paralyzed. I opened up the door, and then no one was in the lounge. And I went into the faculty, which is a separate room from the lounge. No one
Uh-huh.
was in the faculty.
Oh my
Apparently,
gosh.
there was you know how sometimes in that school we have sudden masses. There's a mass during the last period of the class, or
Yeah.
the period before lunch. Yeah, there
Mm.
was apparently an assembly in the church, or in the chapel.
Mm.
Sorry, not church, the chapel, and everyone was
Mm.
required to go there. So just dawned on me, where is everyone? Who was that who just spoke to me? Went down to the chapel, saw my co-teacher there, and I asked him, "Sir, were you just in the faculty lounge? Did you tell me to get down here?" And obviously, his answer was no. He was there all the time. So
Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
I guess I got what I wanted. That's
You
ghost
did.
karma for you.
But no, that's super interesting because I remember that hallway, which kind of goes down the side of the faculty lounge. At the end of that hallway is actually a classroom. It used to be called the speech room. Is it still in use today?
The speech room. At the very end of it, no, I think that's the music room now. Not too sure. It's now the music room.
How
Yeah,
interesting.
so
But yeah,
never heard of the speech room.
so it's like, oh, I'm not sure if it's a speech room, but it was one of, well, okay, maybe my memory is failing me, but it's at the end of that hallway of the teachers. And then, so you know that it's like the building's kind of square, right? And then
Yeah.
that hall to the right are the doors of the teachers area, the teachers faculty room. And then to the left is the garden. And then if you walk down straight down that hall, there's another classroom. And when you go into that classroom, it's like a long classroom, a long, thin classroom.
Yeah, I really think that right now it's the music room. They're using it as the music room.
Right.
When I came
and
in,
I just remember,
yeah, not familiar with
I
the
just
speech room.
remember, yeah, and I just remember it was, it was always kind of kulob. It's really dark. It's really long. And it's just like, I'm just so happy that anytime I had to go there, it was like for official class purposes. So I'd have like an entire class of kids with me and I'd never be alone in there.
So yeah, lots of stories apparently. There's lots of stories.
We could go on and on and on. Like I've had several friends from the school come on and they've all had at least one story about their experience their time during their time there. But going back, I know you've going back to your comic Milky Clear. I know that you get some story submissions and you're actually drawing them for Inktober or Spooktober, whichever hashtag you're using. But some of these stories are really, really creepy. And I've read a couple of them, but I wanted to ask you, which submission is the one that has sort of stood out the most for you and sort of you find really like the creepiest, the weirdest, the most like unsettling?
All right. So this one might come as a surprise for some because this one submission, a lot of people have mentioned, it's fake. It's the artist made that up. This one was the one that steals dogs.
Steals?
The one that steals dogs.
Dogs. Oh yes, I saw
Yeah,
that. It was
familiar
you
with that
posted
one.
that the other day.
Yeah, it was one of the more popular ones. And the comments that I got there was, can I see the video? Or what do you call that? Is this real? And then other Facebook users would answer for me, and they tell them it's fake. It's all made
Yeah.
up. The artist himself made it up. Unbeknownst to them, I didn't really make up all of it. I made up some parts of it, but it
Mm.
was in fact a fan submission.
Okay.
And I did have a basis behind that one. And this fan submission, I believe, I would say was one of the things that most stood out for me because of how detailed he would explain it.
Okay.
The one that I romanticized there, or the one that I personally added, was the idea of the CCTV. I never got to see the CCTV. In fact, I trolled a few people there. I included a Rick roll for the CCTV video. But this fan mentioned to me that yeah, they did see this thing through the CCTV, and
Oh.
the way that he described it was so vivid and so creepy. I got goosebumps the moment that I read it. So unfortunately, this fan specifically mentioned that he didn't really want to get his name out there. So
Sure.
shout out na lang sa'yo.
Understood.
You know who you are. Okay.
But for the benefit of our listeners, do you want to share the story as you received it?
All right. So I don't have the copy of it, of course, but as far as I could remember, this was located in Bicol. Okay.
Bicol.
So in Bicol. So this Bicolana, she mentioned that she had a 5-year-old Shih Tzu that suddenly went missing one day. The story itself is almost exactly the same as I mentioned it. They were wondering how did the Shih Tzu get out of their gate. Their gate has mesh wiring on it. They had a very tall wall as well surrounding their compound. And I don't know. Of course, if you have a dog that's 5 years old, you've had it for a while, you wouldn't want it to get out. You would make measures to make your home completely, sealed. So they were wondering one day, where did their dog go? Nasaan na si Sparky? Sparky is the real name of the dog, by very, very interesting there. So nasaan na si Sparky? And they asked the barangay around. No one had seen it. Luckily, they did have a CCTV. And she mentions to me that in this CCTV, they saw this weird creature, shadow thing, or whatever you would like to call it. Yeah, and it did call the dog up to the gate. And I added the part where the hands elongated. Okay, so that's a little bit of my version of it. But it did call this dog up to the gate. And the dog approached it very slowly. It didn't bark at all, as they mentioned. It just walked up and was somewhat entranced by this, whatever it was. Okay. If it were a person, she would say it was a person. It would be wearing a shirt or whatever. But she mentioned to me that it was naked. It was naked. Yeah, completely naked. It had this unkept hair, and it stood in a very, the word that she used was disturbing or uneasy manner. You know how sometimes when you look at something, you just feel creeped out about it.
Like that doesn't look natural.
Yeah, that's a good word to use. Unnatural manner. So it calls up their dog to the gate. The dog doesn't bark at all, which she mentions it would normally do to strangers.
Right.
So that's already a red flag about it. It bends down near the gate and puts its hands underneath the gate and just grabs the dog and forces it through the bottom of the gate. And obviously, this dog would be flailing. And I omitted this part, for the dog lovers out there, but the dog came out as mangled through the bottom of the gate. Yeah, so when I received the fan submission, obviously I would have thought that nice story you got there, but it must just be a dog napper or whatever.
Right,
but,
right.
The more that I read it, it was naked. It had unkept hair. It move in an unnatural manner. And I I would never do this, but uh, forcing or pulling a creature through a small gap beneath the cave, that's not something that you can normally do, right?
Yeah.
Even if you tried, it would be very hard to pull out a dog from underneath the cave. So I don't know. When I was reading it, just gave me so much of the creeps, and it inspired me so much uh, to draw it and to make my own rendition of it. So for the viewers out there or for the listeners out there, let me just clarify this once again. It is in fact a fan submission. It is a very creepy one. The only things that I added were the fact that I saw the CCTV. I didn't really see the CCTV footage, and the fact that its arms elongated. I just thought that might be a really cool thing to add. But
No, but
yeah,
like, yeah, going back to the story, if it were just some random dog napper who maybe wanted to steal a dog and resell it as a Shih Tzu, Shih Tzus are a coveted breed, it wouldn't benefit the dog napper much if the dog was mangled in any way or
yeah,
harmed in
true.
any way. So that, I don't think it could have been that.
Yeah, so yeah, I fully agree with you on that one. You wouldn't want to hurt the dog if you were going to steal it to
Or
maybe
resell it or
sell for it.
something.
And so really, this was one of the best submissions that I got. It really got to my psyche. And I just thought to myself, I need to draw this. I need to share this story.
Right.
Once again, to my fan who submitted that one, you know who you are. Thank you so much for that submission. Got a lot of likes.
It did. I liked it. But
Sorry about the dog though.
I know, I'm sorry about that dog. I hope it was quick, whatever it was. you know. But I mean, aside from that submission, is there any other like fan submission or story that particularly stands out that you've done an illustration on?
I guess my second favorite so far would be the one for the White Lady of Balete Drive.
Okay.
The White Lady, yeah, because the White Lady of Balete Drive, everybody knows that story.
Yeah.
Everybody knows about the young woman who was ran over by a taxi. The taxi driver, instead of helping her, threw her or buried her underneath the balete tree, and now she haunts the streets as she's looking for the taxi driver. Everybody knows that one. But this fan submission that I got, he added to the story, or he told me that. By the way, this fan was an oldie. He's about 50 plus years old. So,
okay.
Yun yung pinangahawakan niya. Sabi niya, mas matagal na ako dyan, alam ko na yung story nito. Ito yung story nung kabataan ko. So, this one was more reliable, ang sabi niya. The story went that there's actually an often omitted part that this woman survived the initial crash or survived the initial hit and run and was able to call out to someone passing by.
Okay.
And as the story goes, whoever was passing by decided to help her, try to pull her out of the balete tree. She was underneath the roots, and she started to cry loudly. She started to feel pain because there was something pulling her legs deeper down into the balete tree.
Oh, wow.
And it goes even further when he mentions that as she was crying, she told the man to, maybe help her out some more, pull harder. And this man would loosen her grip and come back with a rock in his hand, a big rock. And as the user mentioned, it's as if the man was hypnotized by something or was entranced by something, possessed. You call it what you will. Drops the rock on the head of this young poor woman and starts to bury her in the fallen leaves and finds the balete tree. So it's such a sad twist to it, and it's such an interesting rendition of the story that I've never really heard of before. It essentially paints the woman of Balete Drive or the White Lady of Balete Drive as more of a victim rather than a vengeful spirit. Because now the idea is this woman is not terrorizing the motorists who pass by Balete Drive, but is trying to hitch a ride with them
To get
to
away from there.
essentially, yeah, essentially escape whatever the hell was keeping her there in the first place. So obviously, some people might call it just a hoax or a made-up story, but really,
Urban legend.
when I read it, it's such an interesting retelling of the story that wow, I couldn't get my head out of it. I thought to myself, I need to include this in my Spooktober series. So yeah, it was one of
Cool.
the more insightful ones and the ones that struck me a bit more.
No, that's really interesting. I've never heard sort of that version before. I'd always, just heard the version of um don't pass by Baleta Drive alone at night or with the lights off in your car, because if you look up into your rear view, you'll see someone in the back seat hitching a ride, or there'd be a woman who you just
Yeah,
suddenly
exactly
see in
right.
in the car with you. And like there's also this other variation of the story where this young woman would hail a cab and then tell the cab where to go. And then when they get to the destination, and then the woman would say, just wait a second, I'll just get some money from inside. And then, eventually, like the driver would be waiting for a while and be like, where's this woman gone? And so he'd go into the house and say, excuse me, I'm just here to collect the payment for the cab fare. And then the person who answers the door, like, nobody took a cab here. Oh, and then he would say, oh, this young lady who looks like this so and so. And she's like, and then the person who would answer the door would say, would show him a picture and say, oh, this lady. And then he'd be like, yeah, that's the one I just brought home. And the person who would answer the door and had showed him the picture would just go, oh, she died like a while ago.
Yeah, that's one of the more common versions of the story that I've heard from before.
Yeah.
So
So it's super interesting how these urban legends sort of unfold or like grow over time.
and yeah, and I would say unfold, grow. The word that I would add to that would be evolve. Because
Hmm.
right now that I've shared this story from my user submission, I hope that a lot of people become familiar with this story as well and that would share
Hmm.
them just as much as the original ones were.
Mm-hmm.
Add a little bit more to it, or things that you can pass down to the future generations.
Yeah. Well, I mean, thank you again, AJ, so much for joining us. Before we wrap up, is there anything you want to share with the good people of the internet? What are you up to? What is in store for Milky Clear in the coming weeks?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to thank all my fans currently still following my page. Yeah, we are, I believe, 18,000 strong right now. Hopefully, we get
Yes.
20,000. Might produce something of a special thank you for everyone there.
Why
Stay
don't you tell
tuned.
them
We're
the URL of your Facebook page so that they know where they can find you?
Yeah, it's actually super simple. It's at Milky Clear. That's it. Okay. You can
Okay.
search me up on Instagram. It's surprisingly Milky Clear. And on Facebook, you just search up Milky Clear. Look at the Facebook photo. It's a drawing of myself. You can't miss it. And if all my content here is original and completely free, but if you would like to support me as well, I did put up a Gcash so that you can send any amount to me. Would really help me. This thing is I do it for a hobby. I do it for you. I don't really expect any monetary payment for this one. But if you're in that line of supporting artists, then thank you so much. I would greatly appreciate that as well.
So how can they support you through Gcash?
You can support me by giving any amount to my Gcash. The number of it will be posted in the description of this podcast as well. So if you were one of the people who already gave to me, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. It's been my dream to basically get money out of my own drawings and my own art. I'm not
Hey,
afraid to say it.
No, I mean, I think that's a completely valid thing to hope for, because if you can do this full time, why not? I mean, sorry, students, but it's your teacher's passion.
Yeah. That's the dream,
And
actually. I have so many idols who currently have full-time jobs as comic artists. I want to really, really be one of them. I want to get into that inner circle of comic artists here in the Philippines. That
I think you
it's a
totally
long
could.
ways out.
I
Thank
think
you
you
so
totally
much for
could.
that.
It's for anyone who hasn't checked it out yet, go to facebook.com/milkyclear. It is a great a page full of illustrations and stories, short stories that you can just read while you're doom scrolling on Facebook and you want to creep yourself out at like 2 a.m. It's really great art. It's super creative. And if you can support Johan in any way, you should totally do that.
One more thing. Can I give a quick shout out to one of my best
Sure.
artist friends around there? Okay. So
Sure.
this person has been with me since the start of the start. He's one of my high school friends. He himself is trying to make a name for his artworks. If you could check out the page, Not So Perfect Art. That's Not So Perfect, no spaces and no capitalized, underscore art. Not So Perfect Art. He's one of my
Okay.
best friends and a really great artist. He creates illustrations for games, for movies, for comics, and all sorts of things. I believe he deserves more credit than currently has. It would be such a great gift to me and to him if he were to visit this page and give it a follow.
Will do. That's really nice of you to do. So just to repeat that is facebook.com/not so perfect underscore art,
Yes.
which I have just followed actually.
Thank you so much. That's so nice.
Sure. So, thank you so much, Johan, for joining us. Once again, this has been Grimcast Manila with your host, Antoinette. You can find more episodes on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and everywhere you find your podcasts. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Grimcast Manila. Grimcast Manila is a podcast of creepy stories from around the metro and is produced, recorded, and distributed by Big Baby Studios. Find out more about our other shows on Big Baby at itsabigbaby.com or facebook.com/Big Baby Studios. Have a good night, everyone.